Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I watched Saturday's Michigan game, and Jim Harbaugh is being super aggressive, and Michigan is absolutely dump trucking people and look like a competent football team. And meanwhile, Ohio State is like stumbling around the field against Tulsa. And it's like, did we go through like did we walk into a wardrobe and end up in some other strange land? What is going on? And why is this lion talking to me? Tony, what's going on?
Listen, welcome to Harnia. Yes, today is our Michigan Monday show, recapping Michigan's 63-10 win over Northern Illinois, talking about how that applies to Ohio State, because as Tom was saying, it's eventually going to apply, and they will apply November 27th when Ohio State goes to Michigan Stadium and they meet. And there's plenty to talk about because both teams have the strengths that Michigan right now seem to maybe uh, counteract or fit Ohio State's weaknesses. And even if Tulsa could throw for like 420 yards against you, you'd think Michigan can throw for, I don't know, 175, something like that. They can also have success. But yeah, this game was, I don't want to say it was murder. You score on what your like first 9 possessions. That constitutes it in football. They they dominated as expected, I guess. But I don't know that it was as expected, just because at some point you wait for Michigan to come back a little. But watching this game, there was no coming back to earth, because they dominated on the ground. Another 373 yards rushing in this one, 7.8 yards per carry. Blake Corum went for 125 yards. Tom, he is the first Michigan running back to rush for 100 yards in 3 straight games in a decade. Michigan's postgame notes said Denard Robinson was the last to do it in 2011. However, I think I may have spotted a correction, because Fitzgerald Toussaint did it later in 2011 as well, when he rushed for 100 yards in 3 straight games late in the season, capped with, I think, like 120 yards in a win over the Ohio State Buckeyes. This running game is pretty amazing right now. I don't know how much longer it's going to last, but it's here and it's impressive.
Yeah, I mean they're doing to opposing teams. I mean, they have not played anyone good. They've not played anyone great this year. They've not really played anyone good this year. And I mean, we can talk about the context around the 3 teams they've played, because it's like they have horrendous results. They have each has like one good result, and then they have the Michigan game. And so you don't quite know what to make of them. But when you look at the fact that the Michigan game is by far their worst result, like at some point that's meaningful data. That is a useful data point that however good or bad these teams are, the worst result they've had is the one against Michigan. That tells you a little bit of something. I do wonder, like Michigan is just like throwing rock this year. It is just in the same way that Jim Harbaugh has always loved to throw rock. The question is, is this because he now has the horses to just throw rock? And how long will that work throughout the course of the year? I'm interested to see this weekend against Rutgers, and I have a special teams thing to watch when we get to special teams against Rutgers this week. But I'm also interested to see, okay, now, are you able to dominate Rutgers? Because Rutgers is like a, low to mid tier Big Ten team or Big Ten East team this year. Are you able to do this against Rutgers? I still don't know if I'm going to completely be buying it until they do it to Wisconsin. Like if they can do it to Wisconsin, then okay, I'm going to be in. But it's, I'm not saying they're a good team, but they are doing to bad teams what good teams do to bad teams. So I think that's useful information at this point. My big takeaway from the game was, I hope we are in a state with legalized sports betting before, there's any kind of a change to the Ohio State or Michigan thing, because it feels like you're going to see a real overcorrection in the Ohio State Michigan line, like Michigan favored by 2 points or something like that in a week or so. I just hope we are in a state where sports betting is legal when that line has overcorrected to that point.
It will be interesting to see. I'm wondering if maybe Western Michigan was the best team on Michigan's schedule to this point. They went and beat Pitt, which it's not nothing, you know.
Mhm.
So that's something there. I just the big plays, the ability to use AJ Henning on the jet sweeps. They're not just pounding up the middle. It's not just between the tackles. And Blake Corum continues to be impressive. Big play guy, another 51-yard run in this one. Didn't really use him as much in the passing game as they have in the past. He's he's really good. He's patient. Son Haskins, we know what he is. Another 9 carries for 56 yards for him. I was also really impressed with Donovan Edwards. He got taken down by a couple of shoestring tackles where he could have had some big gainers, but then he finally got over that with a 58-yarder. It was like patiently waiting for the hole and then just burst through it. Saw the guy reaching at his ankles, stepped over that, and was gone. And those three together are entertaining to watch. And then they mix it up with AJ Henning with some jet sweeps. And to me, like the misdirection stuff at this point is going to give Ohio State trouble. Ohio State finally defended the run well this week, but it was Tulsa. It wasn't Michigan. And so I can't wait to see how that goes. But remember, Tom, as Jim Tressel used to say, September is for pretenders. November is for contenders. And right now, Michigan is doing what they should be doing. Ohio State isn't, and it may not matter in November.
That's the thing. There's a long way to go till November, and that's why I think you may see the line swing way too far one direction now, and then you got to get it in that window before it swings back the other direction. Because I don't think I've seen anything so far this year that convinces me that Michigan has better talent than Ohio State. I think Michigan's just executing a heck of a lot better than Ohio State is. You go back to some of those like John Cooper teams in the 90s, where in September they would just, I mean, my freshman year of 1996, the first 2 football games I ever attended in Ohio Stadium, Ohio State won by a combined score of 142-7. And then they went on the road and beat Notre Dame the next week. And then by the end of the year, they lost to Michigan. And they had the week before that, they barely beat a not good Indiana team on the road. And, you know, they just, there are the peaked in September teams, and there are teams that peak later in the year. We'll see where the peak for this Ohio State team is. If the peak for this Michigan team is better than it is right now, then you've really got something. I don't know that I necessarily buy that there's that much more, but I mean, to your point on the Henning things, I have a note here: reverse to AJ Henning, then a pop pass, and just how would Ohio State linebackers respond to that right now? That like, there's a long way to go till November, and Ohio State very clearly is still figuring some stuff out. Ohio State is very fortunate that this is not the 2020 season. The initial Big Ten schedule, where Michigan was on the schedule for like mid-October. Ohio State is going to be happy to have them safely ensconced in late November and give themselves a few more weeks to figure out what's what. Because right now, if the game was like scheduled for this week, then you would think, yeah, Michigan being favored by a couple points, like, yeah, you could see that.
Yeah, I'm just imagining Michigan doing some of the stuff that Oregon and has done, where you bunch everybody on one side and then they just run a sweep with Henning to the other side and out leverage Ohio State, and nobody's catching that guy.
When has that ever worked against the Ohio State defense? Name one time that has ever worked against the Ohio State defense.
I could name 2, which would then you would say, yeah, but that's not one. And you would try to win the argument that way. Cade McNamara, I wrote last week, he's not throwing the ball downfield. He did that on Saturday, completed an 87-yarder. But Tom, I will say that a lot of those were yak yards. At least 50 of those 87 yards. So it's a 37-yard pass even downfield. Yes, of course it is. I'm joking, but the passing game has been a criticism of mine. I'm thinking now, the way they have eased, and I say they, Jim Harbaugh, Josh Gaddis, the way they have eased in Cade McNamara into this passing game, into the season. He started one game last year, but that, now he is the guy. They're not putting too much on him. Contrast that with what's going on at Ohio State, where Ryan Day has said we've put too much on CJ Stroud, and they're not putting hardly anything on Cade McNamara right now, and he's doing well. He now has 108 passes with no interceptions in his career. So I don't think Michigan should put that in their post-game notes, because eventually at some point that's going to get out there and it's going to become this thing. And then when you least want it to happen, there comes that first interception. And even talking about it now, I'm assuming he's going to throw an interception against Rutgers next week.
Basically the exact opposite of the Ohio State fans constantly talking about how Jabril Peppers had never intercepted a pass at Michigan. And then, like, you guys, every time you type that out, there's a direct line to the football gods, and you know exactly what's going to happen. And then lo and behold, what happened in the 2016 Ohio State Michigan game, Tony?
Exactly. Jabril Peppers had an interception on a tipped pass. You talk about your expected points per play or expected points or whatever. Every tweet or message board post about Jabril Peppers' interception increased the expected interception per game against Ohio State rate for Jabril Peppers, until football gods said, you know what, let's just do this. Let's go crazy.
The XIA stat, yes, expected interceptions added. Yes, every one of you keyboard warriors, you're guilty. That's on you. Yeah, there's I mean, I want to go back to Corum for just 1 second, because he's fat. Like, he's always been the speed guy, and it was like, oh, he's the short, fast guy. He's got good balance. He showed some pretty good vision on Saturday too. Like, okay, there's because he was last year the speed guy who was averaging 3 yards a carry. And it was like, does he just not have the feet? Does he not have the vision? He sure looked like he's got both the feet and the vision on Saturday. That was impressive to me. To your point about McNamara, this is like the easiest quarterbacking you could possibly ever have to do, because it's like, if the other team is looking at you just running the ball and running, and just like, I think they averaged 7 yards a carry, and it was like, it felt like more than that. Somehow it was only 7 yards a carry, but they had, if you can just run the ball, and the other team knows they have to keep throwing assets at stopping that, which then ultimately opens up stuff downfield. They took 4 shots downfield that I counted in my notes, and one was that long touchdown to Cornelius Johnson, where the cornerback he bit on an out and up, and Johnson got behind him, and then the cornerback stumbled, so it was like a wide open throw. If I could throw a football 50 yards, I could have made that throw. I don't know if I can throw a football 50 yards, but if maybe even still with a good jugs gun, I could have made that throw. So, that was the one that was completed. There was one that was in the end zone that was like, it was the corner probably got there a little early, but you're not necessarily going to get that call. There was another one that was a long one that was, they drew a pass interference call on to what's his name? Now I'm blanking, the transfer wide receiver they just got. Him.
Baldwin.
Yeah, there you go, Dalen Baldwin. There was a long one to Dalen Baldwin where that was a pass, was a passer interference call. So, it's not like you have to fear the Michigan downfield passing game, but it's like they're showing it, and they're at least taking shots where you have to be like aware of it at least. One of the things that was really impressive to me was you're seeing a more aggressive Jim Harbaugh this year. We've talked about him going for it on his side of the 50 on 4th down a couple times last week or 2 weeks ago. Saturday, they're up 35-3 before the half. NIU is very clearly in like, get the heck out of here. Like, I think they ran the ball on 3rd down or something like that, got stuffed, like, just get to the locker room mode, basically. Harbaugh calls timeout with 30 seconds left, and then goes after the punt to try and block it and try and get up to 42-3 before halftime. Like, that's a killer instinct you have not seen from him. Like, he very clearly lost his mojo the last couple of years. It looks like it's back, and it's easy to have your mojo when you're up 35-3, and it's easy to have your mojo when you're winning and everything's working. We'll see how that continues, but the lack of energy around the Michigan program, the lack of enthusiasm around the program, like, that no longer seems like it's an issue there this year, which represents significant progress.
It does. I love the aggression. I love the I don't think he minds if an opposing coach is going to come up to him after a game and be like, "What's your deal?" And he'll tell you what his deal is. He's here to win some freaking football games. Back to Blake Corum, because we can just continue to talk about him. I remember being in a discussion with somebody on our forum, on the Ask the Insiders forum at BuckeyeScoop.com, who was saying that very adamantly that Blake Corum is better or will be better than TreVeyon Henderson. And based on the evidence at hand, it's like, well, I don't expect TreVeyon Henderson to average 3 yards a carry this year like Blake Corum did. Watching Corum right now, I see what that guy is talking about. Like, he is really, really good. I I don't even need to compare the two. Like, obviously, Travion Henderson is better as a freshman than Corum was as a freshman, but I see what he was talking about. And he's a guy that isn't just, well, he can only handle about 12 carries a game because then he starts to break down. I think he's going to be able to go all season long doing whatever they need. And I don't see him as this little scat back, because you see him, he is fighting through some ankle tackles and some just, he's a tough dude, and they can use him in a lot of different ways. I think he's leading the nation on all-purpose yards as well, because he's doing the kick return stuff and he catches the ball. So just really, really impressive guy right now. I want to see him do it against the rest of the Big Ten and the Big Ten East and these defenses that are more geared, because this schedule so far has been really, really bad.
Yeah, this is not. I think we looked at this schedule coming the first 3 games. It was like, you're going to play a good team in Washington and probably an okay team in one of the MAC teams, and the other one will be bad. And it's like, yeah, you might have played 2 bad MAC teams and a bad Pac-12 team. Like, that might just kind of be what you have. But again, you are doing to bad teams what you should do to bad teams if you were a good team. Another guy we haven't talked about in addition to Corum is Hassan Haskins, who just kind of had the Hassan Haskins game. Like, it's just like, what did Hassan Haskins do? Like, exactly what you would expect Hassan Haskins to do. He is a really good piece for them, because he means Corum doesn't have to be the short yardage guy between the tackles. Like, you have a guy to do that, because that's not Corum's role. I had talked about Corum as maybe like a new Chris Evans a couple weeks ago. I think I'm seeing more than Chris Evans at this point. Like, I think the ceiling's a little higher than that right now. So yeah, I'm with you on Corum, but the fact that he doesn't have to do everything is something that's really going to help him long term.
Corum is more Mike Hart than Chris Evans at this point, because I'm not saying he needs the ball 30 times. I am saying he's a smaller guy who has more speed than Mike Hart, but isn't just some little dude. There's some really crazy numbers from this game aside from the score. Tom, I'm going to give you one number. Let me see if you can guess what that number is concerning. The number is 52, Tom. Do you know what I'm talking about?
52. Did they run the ball 52 times?
52 is the number of offensive players that played in this game for Michigan.
Well, that's basically Ohio State's defense, isn't
it? Yes. They played five quarterbacks, 5 left tackles. And Tom, just off the top of your head, can you guess how many tight ends played in this game for Michigan?
I think I can very clearly tell you the answer. The answer is all. That is also the answer to who started for Michigan at tight end.
Terrible. 8 tight ends played in this game for Michigan, which is one above their average. No, it's a lot more than their average.
That seems like a stat that Michigan would have in their record book. Like, most tight ends played in the game. Like, yep. They absolutely have most fullbacks played in the game. Absolutely, that's in their record book somewhere. It's not even in the back. That's like in the middle. But yeah, that's like, I think there's a possibility that's sort of what you see from Ohio State this weekend. Like, when they're playing Akron and they're a 53-point favorite, like, you would hope that's, you get an opportunity to play some of those guys, play that depth, because, you need game reps. You need game reps to have, that's how many times have we heard players talk about, you can't, you do as much as you can in practice, but you can't replicate game reps. Like, you've got to get these guys on the field. That's going to help Michigan long-term, because you're getting JJ McCarthy, you're getting Donovan Edwards reps. I mean, those guys were in the game basically halftime, maybe one drive into the third quarter, playing a bunch of snaps. McCarthy was like 4 of 6 passing. Like, it's not a ton. He didn't do anything spectacular, but it's just more game reps. You're starting, you start settling down a little bit. He didn't have any incredibly ludicrous passes that I saw that were, back across his body that turned into touchdowns, or were like, don't ever do that again. That was a touchdown. Don't ever do that again. So, this is just sort of the learning curve. This is the advantage you have when you're playing games where you're up by 1 million points. You can play some depth. Ohio State has just like not had those games for the last 2 years. That's something that's going to end up paying off for Michigan long term.
Yeah, 19 offensive linemen played for Michigan in this game, and that's not even including maybe a couple of spare guys played on special teams as well. What I would contrast that with the defense, which I like the fact that they didn't go nearly as deep in the back 7 as the offense did, and what I mean is, at safety, Brad Hawkins and RJ Moten only had Makari Page and Rod Moore behind them. Like they only played 4 safeties, which I like because it gets the guys behind them as many snaps as possible. I still think the immediate depth at Michigan needs more time and needs to see the field. I don't need to see the third team. The second team needs reps so that they can push the first team and make this defense better. And you see, they did play quite a few defensive linemen and some other linebackers got in there and a bunch of corners got in there as well. I just like the fact that they concentrated some stuff and the guys who really needed the snaps got it. I was also impressed, and maybe I missed some things here, but Vincent Gray helping out. He was an aggressive run defender. He was tackling on screens. Maybe his best game as a Wolverine before things went bad and he was a starter. Like he had some good moments as a reserve guy, but he played well. Jamon Green had an interception on a tipped pass to the other corner. So a pretty good day. And hey, it was just good to see Michigan finally beat Rocky Lombardi, the former Michigan State quarterback who transferred to Northern Illinois. And it was just, the revenge tour is here, baby.
Every Michigan fan watching this on YouTube right now was clicking the thumbs up video as we're an icon as we were saying all these nice things and just went, nope, click thumbs down to you, Tony Gerdeman.
You ruined it.
Like and subscribe, friends. Like and subscribe. It was such an interesting game because Michigan felt like they dominated the whole game, and you're the point where NIU is like saying like no mas. They're running the ball on like 3rd and 12. I mean, like no faith in the line to protect, no faith in receivers to get open. But then you look and it's like, how many sacks did Michigan have? Oh, 1. How many TFLs did they have? 4. So it wasn't like they were just like a python just eating them whole. It was just kind of like consistently dominant. Michigan, NIU never really got anything going. They had one drive at the beginning of the game where they get the ball down to the 3-yard line, get to 4th and short at like the 3-yard line. They're down 7-0. Tony, do you know what they did?
Field goal.
They kicked a field goal. Tony, do you know what my thoughts on that were?
Not good.
Maybe when you're going on the road and you're a big underdog, you should at least make a token effort to appear like you're maybe trying to win the game by trying to score a touchdown. Like, I don't know what you saw out of your offense, your defense the first time Michigan's offense was on the field, but I didn't see, these guys are going to get a ton of stops today. Like, let's kick a field goal. Let's play a field goal game. Like, no, that's not how you do it. The only other points they got, it was 63-3 in the 4th quarter. And NIU had a drive. They got stopped. They punted away. And then Michigan had 2 guys wearing number 1 on the field at the same time on a punt return. And so that first down that 5 yards gave NIU a first down. And then Rocky Lombardi had a quarterback keeper, which, turned into a long run and set up a touchdown. But obviously, Tony, that wouldn't apply to the Ohio State offense at all. So we don't even really discuss that. So yeah, it was just a very consistent, thorough, just strangulation for 60 minutes from that Michigan defense. It was like there was the one drive, and then there was the one drive at the beginning of the game, and there was the one drive at the end of the game that got extended by a just sort of a silly penalty by the backup punt return unit, and that was it. And again, this is not like absolute proof that Michigan is going to win the Big Ten and go to the college football playoff this year, but this is what you're supposed to do. If you're a good team, this is what you're supposed to do to bad teams. And Michigan is just not, outside of like there was a Delaware State game like 10 years ago. I can't think back to that many games that Michigan looked like that against a bad team. Like they generally kind of fart around and win 42-17 or whatever. That was not what that was on Saturday. That was just get into the sack and then we're going to beat you with baseball bats for the next 4 hours. It was as convincing and thorough as I have seen from Michigan in a long, long time.
I think part of it is they have explosive playmakers in Corum, and they're finding a way each week to get a big play from either Cornelius Johnson. Dalen Baldwin had the one with JJ McCarthy the week before, the game before. And so they're able to do that. The key obviously will be doing that against real teams. But yeah, a 72-yard field goal drive, a 68-yard touchdown drive, the longest drives other than that were 2 24-yard drives and an 11-yard drive. Everything else of their like 12 possessions, those are the only ones that went over 10 yards. So it was a pretty dominant affair by the Michigan defense overall, except for, they did give up that 45-yard run to Rocky Lombardi. So I think safe to say that there are a ton of questions about this Michigan defense. If they're going to give up a run like that to Rocky Lombardi in the fourth quarter of a game that is still in doubt, I am concerned.
Not the first time Rocky Lombardi's made big plays in that stadium, but we're not here to talk about the past. We're here to, and you went through Michigan NIU's drives. I think we said this earlier, but here's the results of Michigan's first 11 drives. Ready? I don't even need to look it up. I can tell you. Ready? Touchdown, 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 touchdown. Downs, and that was only downs because they had a touchdown that got called back on a holding penalty. Otherwise, it would have been a 10th touchdown. And then downs on the last drive. But that last drive was 10 plays, 27 yards, and 7 minutes, which tells you, without having watched that drive, you now know exactly what that drive was. 10 plays, 27 yards, 7 minutes off the clock. That was just Dan Villari just running the ball for 2 yards a pop every single time. It was, they played so many running backs. They hit, you got down to like the fourth, fifth running backs, and there were still guys making big plays. It was impressive. That was stuff. It's just skill talent you have not seen from Michigan in a long time. We'll see how well it carries over. And, NIU didn't look overly interested to be there in the second half at that point when it's 35-3 at halftime. So, read into that what you will. If a bad MAC team is not particularly interested in being there, you don't want to over read into that. But again, this is what a good team looks like when it's playing a bad team.
Yeah, and they looked pretty good. But now the season begins, I guess you could say. They have Rutgers this week, then they go to Wisconsin, to Nebraska, then a bye week. That game at Nebraska, give the Huskers some credit for what they did against Oklahoma. Maybe that's a little bit stiffer of a test. I'm still waiting to believe in Wisconsin. We know they have some issues, and by saying that, Tom, if Michigan goes ahead and beats Wisconsin, we could say, well, we knew Wisconsin had some problems. We knew they had some questions, right? We told you guys, but yeah, things are going to get more serious. And then we can really, if they continue to do this, and I'm not saying 63-10, but like a 42-10, 38-10 over Rutgers, to me, that means something.
Yeah, Rutgers took Michigan to the wire last year, took Michigan to triple overtime last year. Rutgers is a halfway decent team. Rutgers will be the best team that they've played this year, I think, which is wild to say because they played Washington already. I think Rutgers might be the best, most well-rounded team. Rutgers is not an outstanding team. Mm. I am very intrigued to see Ohio State and Michigan play Rutgers in back-to-back weeks. I am very intrigued to see that because, you have Rutgers going to Ann Arbor this Saturday, and then Ohio State going into the snake pit that is Shea Stadium in the week after that. So that, I think that's going to be as apples to apples a comparison as we have between these two teams. I want to see what that looks like. One thought on this week, I was watching the game and I watched Michigan kick the ball off, and they do the thing that Ohio State has done for a million years where your whole kick team is like on the hash and over. There's no one outside the hash on one side. Remember that throwback that Rutgers did against Ohio State last year where they scored a touchdown and a kickoff. Just keep that in mind. I'm assuming Michigan has watched, Michigan's coaching staff has watched that game and is aware of that. But if Michigan's doing that again, just keep an eye on that. You have seen Greg Schiano pull that once before. I don't know if it'll work again, but you may see that tried yet again this week. I saw Michigan lining up for a kickoff right at the beginning of the game, and I was like, I know what I'm going to see next week. I know it.
I wonder if Rutgers comes out pulling out all stops, as they say, or do they first see, do we need to? Or like if they just come in swinging, that would make for some interesting watching. And I think maybe at this point they might want to just be aggressive from the outset and try to set a tone with, you better watch your backs. We're doing everything we can. So you better just slow down everything you do a little bit because we might be pulling something crazy here.
Well, and if Rutgers does jump out to, say Rutgers is leading 10-3 in the end of the first quarter, how does Michigan respond to that? Because Michigan has not gotten busted in the mouth yet this year. Let's see what that looks like. It's very easy to be happy and aggressive and have everyone have good vibes on the sidelines when you're up 35-3 at halftime. Like if it's a little tight, okay, let's see how they respond then. Because you have seen very good teams with very strong cultures have cracks in the facade when things get a little tough. And it's very easy to feel very good about how everything's going when everything is going perfectly. The challenge is about to start getting a little stiffer this week and then progressively stiffer after that. So, don't necessarily book your plane tickets for the college football playoff just yet, Michigan fans, but it is, this is by far not only the best Michigan team we've seen in the last couple of years, but the most entertaining as well.
Yeah, and the most confident and not false confidence at this point. And then not to take a shot, but like they should be feeling good about how they're doing. And this isn't just it's not just built on air. Like they are executing. And that's the thing that you should take notice of. Yes, they're playing bad teams, but they're destroying them. And that means they're executing well. And they're only doing a little bit of what they have to. Like they who knows how much more they have to show. And maybe we'll see. Well, I think we'll have to see more of that this week, or maybe we won't. And if not, then kudos to Michigan again, because they've got things going in the right direction. Tom, anything else before we get out of here?
No, I'm like legitimate. This is not the show that I thought we would be doing this fall. We had talked about doing this show, and it was like, all right, well, this is probably going to be another bleak Michigan season. Like this is like these turn into like really interesting shows, and I'm like really intrigued to watch. It's not just like you turn it on and it's just people who don't want to be like last year's Michigan team. Like, holy smokes, they did not want to be there. And so this has made these shows a lot more fun and a lot more interesting for me. So good job. Keep it up, Michigan.
Good job. Keep it up. It is. And they are fun to watch. And even when you expect, like everybody expects what Hassan Haskins is going to do, but he's still fun to watch doing it. And it's like, I don't know, it's like watching the forging shows. Yes, you're just going to make a sword, but it's cool to watch you just bang on the steel and then, hey, look, a sword. And that's Hassan Haskins. And then, Blake Corum is the guy chopping the hog in half or whatever. And, they both have their parts and they're fun to watch. And we'll see the passing game expand. But I do think the defense needs to get a bit more disruptive. But as long as you're tackling guys, Tom, you know what? After we've seen what we've seen from Ohio State, if you can just tackle, be happy with that. Take that, go home and just rest your head easy. So that will do it for this show. I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. A reminder to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. If you are not yet a member, please become one. Check us out on the Ask the Insiders message board. You can also find all of our videos and podcasts and interview sessions and live streams at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. Subscribe there. Be notified anytime we go live or drop a new show. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow.